Hi, my name is Andrew Sears, and I'm the president of City Vision University, and we've designed a free COVID-19 course for nonprofits and ministries. And one of the biggest concerns that people have is that organizations and people are being forced to work from home. It's okay to do that maybe for a week or so, but as we do this longer term, we really need to think about how do we maintain healthy relationships and organizations in a remote work environment. So I've been working in my organization as a remote work environment for over 10 years and have thought a lot about this issue and have been working through that a lot. So one of the key issues in managing a remote work environment is this management grid, and it's called the Blake-Moten grid. And the idea is that you have to balance concern for people with concern for results. And the goal for effective management is this quadrant over here with team management. You want to have high concern for people and high expectations for results. Now, the problem with working remotely is that ultimately, you have this idea. If you've read the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he has this idea of making deposits and withdrawals from an emotional bank account. And one of the key lessons we've learned after over a decade of working remotely is that emotional deposits happen much more slowly in a remote work environment. So ultimately, what happens is remote work can drive your organization to this produce or perish management mentality unless you're really intentional about investing in relationships. So that's what this talk is about. So ultimately, what are some of the best practices to maintain relationships in a remote work environment? The first thing, and all of us are learning this, establish routines, and you especially want to try to get enough live video time. So some organizations will do 5 to 10 minute team meetings each morning. Others will schedule more intentional time since usually if you're, working remotely, you're not going to have this spontaneous, meet each other at the coffee break. So that's not going to happen remotely. And the other thing in relationship building, video is critical. We ensure that all staff have video cameras, and we use for one-on-one meetings and staff meetings. And I get many of you are working at home where there might be some privacy issues, but do your best to figure that out. Put a desk in a bedroom, do whatever you can, because if you don't do video, the relationships are going to suffer. And as a Christian organization, we alternate every other meeting with personal check-ins and prayer requests to provide relational trust. And sometimes we'll go through, almost like a book club on a book that can help us, build trust. So, and that's something that's common, in a lot of Christian ministries where you'll have, a time where you'll pray for each other, but you just have to do it a little bit differently if you're doing it remotely. The other thing that's a little bit different is if you're running staff meetings, I've found that you need to use, what people call the round robin approach to the meeting, where, some questions you can ask, does anyone have any feedback? But what I found is you get about 1/5 the feedback. If you're just dealing with people online, you ask a general question like that, because it feels kind of remote. Because of that, a lot of the things we'll do with staff, if I actually want feedback, I'm going to go through and ask each person and just have them go through and take turns. So another thing to think about is how do you manage conflict in a remote work environment? I always do conflict via video when possible. I personally do every live interaction I have with staff via video. I do that both to build relationship, and sometimes, someone's having a bad day and you wouldn't know it just from the tone of their voice, but you can see it on their face. But also, in the off chance that conflict might occur. I do have a home office where privacy issues are minimal. I also try to avoid conflict in groups and online settings because it's a lot more difficult to manage the emotional dynamics in online settings. I'll try to tell people to take things offline. And I basically have a rule, like I don't drink and drive, and I don't do conflict by email or chat or text. I think it's relationally horribly damaging whenever you do that. So, I try to be extra courteous, upbeat, and thankful in email and chat because emotional content isn't always effectively conveyed. I'm trying to get better at that because a lot of times I just try to be efficient. And I also am more intentional with my staff in asking them questions to assess how they're feeling about work and their emotional bank account with them. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So how does City Vision do remote work? So all of our staff work from home, and we've worked from home for a while now. So we have meeting routines. We have a one-to-one meeting routine weekly using Zoom. Then we have a staff meeting weekly. And then if we have ad hoc meetings that are needed, we do those with Zoom. And sometimes we'll have Zoom meetings with faculty. If it's a faculty training, we'll record it. Or if it's a course, we'll record it and only make it available within the course for privacy reasons. Another thing we do, and this is more just about efficiency, we do almost everything in Google Docs and Sheets. And, we have staff do their work plan and task list that allows for collaborative editing. Staff we have a staff meeting Google Doc, and each week we just update it. It's similar to a whiteboard, and we'll just add a date, and we'll say the items that we're going to cover. And if there's any sub-documents, we'll just link to those. And I found with staff working remotely, it can be helpful to have more structured task lists. If you're just working together, you can check in a lot, but you have to add, just like with kids at home, you have to have a more structured schedule. With staff working remotely, it can be helpful to have more structured task lists. And ultimately, how we work is we have hundreds of interlinked Google Docs and Sheets for projects and organizational units. And someday, if I had time, I'd write a book on what I would call this as nonlinear adaptive project management. And part of the reason why that makes sense in an online environment is just it makes a lot more sense when everyone's in different locations. So some of the other techs, we currently use RingCentral for soft phones. So these are phones that will just ring to your computer. You can have your own phone line, but there's a lot of these soft phones. You can just Google them to find it. Zoom also has a soft phone system. For chat, we use Google Hangouts, but we're not really happy with that. Some people use Skype, some people use other systems. And for shared drive, we use Microsoft OneDrive for files that aren't Google Docs or Sheets, and it's just easier to interact directly using Microsoft Documents. So for the meeting format, we've actually moved to a little bit more formal meeting format. So people in their Google Doc work plan, each staff has a Google Doc work plan. I'll ask them just each week to answer the following questions. And the first two are just personal check-ins. Overall, I'm, and then, people can check one of these boxes. And then this other one is really focused on, what Christian organizations try to do is if we ever have any conflict with people, we bring it up, but we also try to build people up. So you have these two things, you served me when, you bugged me when. And people are saying, if I have some sort of conflict with you, I'm going to bring it up. This actual format came from a book by John Pearson called Mastering the Management Buckets. He's been a trainer with lots of different ministries and works with ECFA and a lot of different groups. And then just some questions that some of these kind of overlap a little bit, but it just helps people think through, is there anything you need to talk through with their supervisor? So technology recommendations, you ultimately have four main categories of things. You need some sort of document sharing system, Google Apps, and Office 365 and OneDrive. We actually use both, but some organizations will use one or the other. Google Docs really operates quite a bit different than Microsoft Documents. So, try to use both of those and see which one fits you the best. And, your organization may already be using some of these, but adapting to how does it work in a remote environment is going to be a little bit different. So video, just about everyone these days, the best system is Zoom. You can get a Zoom Pro account for each meeting room you might need. You can get a nonprofit discount from this organization called TechSoup. And chat, we mainly use that for just, brief check-ins with people. It's helpful with the younger generation. You can go with, if you're using Google, you can use their chat systems or Microsoft's chat systems. And, if you're working remotely, you can decide, are you going to use mobile numbers or soft phones? Or are you going to use some sort of, business soft phone? So All right. So the other thing we have to work on is just expectations for staff working remotely. And I realize in COVID-19 right now, you can't set very strong expectations with people because everyone's kind of in survival mode. But we've been working with our staff remotely for 10 years. And, I try to tell people, try to have boundaries around work time as if they were at work. Now with kids at home, that's not going to be possible. But if you're, after the initial crisis, this could apply. Suggest that they, have a separate workspace that they treat as going to the office. We have some of our staff do timesheets through Google Docs. And I would encourage generous and frequent breaks to avoid staff burnout. And sometimes, you'll find staff, they get bored and they start doing social media. In my view, if a staff member is going to rest, you want them to rest effectively, not just doing social media. Have them go for a run, have them, take a good break where they're going to feel rested, not they're just going to have their mind numb. And, we recognize that you have to adapt to the particular needs of employees working from home. So, I have kids ages 9 and 11, 2 boys, and that's, a certain category. And then we have some employees that have very young kids, and that's another category. And then some people don't have any kids. So, we provide headsets to everyone as needed, provide HD webcams as needed. Both of those are important to help improve communication. So, the last thing is additional resources for staff and self-care. So this video is a part of the COVID course for nonprofits and ministries. So you can go to nonprofitcovid19.org. There you can get a lot of our course playlists. So City Vision has a lot of different courses, and we have a lot of free resources that are available in those courses. So you might look up these courses and you can get the video playlist from those. And if you're interested in our degrees or courses, you can get that online. So thanks. And if you have any feedback, just send us an email on the website. Thanks a lot. Bye.